Have you ever argued with someone about whether a room was too cold when it felt perfectly warm to you, and slowly realized that maybe you were both right? 25 centuries ago, a Greek thinker built an entire philosophy on that simple, everyday feeling. And in doing so, he gave you permission to trust your own experience of the world in a way that still feels revolutionary today.
Let me ask you something before we begin. When you taste a cup of coffee and call it bitter, while your friend sips the very same coffee and calls it smooth, which of you is telling the truth? Your instinct might be to say that one of you must simply be wrong, that there is a single correct answer hiding somewhere. But what if both of you are right, each in your own world, each measuring the coffee by your own tongue and your own life? This is the astonishing idea that a man named Protagoras placed at the very center of human thought, and it changed everything. Hold that question in your mind, because the answer is stranger and warmer than you expect. It may just change how you see every disagreement you ever have again. The thinker who dared to say this was born around the year 485 before the Common Era in a Greek city called Abdera. Abdera sat on the northern coast of the Aegean, a place sometimes mocked by other Greeks as a town of simple fools. Yet from this supposedly foolish city came one of the sharpest and most influential minds of the entire ancient world. Protagoras would rise from these humble beginnings to walk with kings and statesmen, to shake the foundations of Greek belief, and to earn both enormous fame and dangerous enemies. His journey is a reminder that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. His life is a quiet promise that where you come from need not decide how far you can go. And few thinkers have ever traveled further from their beginnings than he did. To understand who Protagoras was, you first need to meet a brand new kind of person who appeared in ancient Greece. They were called the Sophists, and they were something the world had never quite seen before. Traveling teachers who sold wisdom for a fee. In a world waking up to democracy, where a clever speaker could sway a crowd and change his own fortunes, the ability to argue well was suddenly worth its weight in gold. The Sophists promised to teach exactly that, the art of speaking, reasoning, and succeeding in public life. And Protagoras was the very first and most famous of them all. They were the rock stars of their age, dazzling crowds with the sheer power of their words. And no one shone more brightly among them than the man from Abdera. Picture what it meant to be the first professional teacher in human history. Before Protagoras, wisdom was something you stumbled upon, inherited, or received from the gods, but no one had made a career of selling it. He traveled from city to city across the Greek world, offering to teach young men how to think and speak and prosper. He charged high fees for his lessons, and he grew wealthy from them, which scandalized many who felt that wisdom should never be bought or sold. Yet in charging for knowledge, Protagoras was quietly inventing a profession that would one day shape all of human civilization. In a sense, every teacher you have ever had is walking in the footsteps he first laid down. He turned the sharing of knowledge into a calling and a craft. At the beating heart of his philosophy lay a single, thunderous sentence that still echoes across the ages. Man is the measure of all things, he declared. Of the things that they are, and of the things that they are not. At first, this sounds like a riddle, but its meaning is as deep as the ocean and as close as your own skin. What Protagoras meant was that there is no truth floating above us, no view from nowhere that judges all things. Instead, each human being is the yardstick by which their own reality is measured, and that changes how we see everything. Read that sentence again, slowly, and feel how it quietly places you at the center of your own world. It is one of the most human ideas anyone has ever spoken. Allow this idea to sink in slowly, because it touches your life more than you might think. When the wind blows and you feel cold while the person beside you feels pleasantly cool, Protagoras would say the wind truly is cold for you and truly is cool for them. Neither of you is mistaken, because there is no secret true temperature of the wind hovering apart from anyone who feels it.
The wind is cold to the one who shivers and mild to the one who smiles, and both experiences are equally real. Reality, in this vision, is not one fixed thing, but blooms freshly in each person who lives it. You have felt this truth yourself, every time your comfort clashed gently with someone else's. Protagoras simply had the courage to build a whole philosophy on it. Think of how gently revolutionary this way of seeing the world truly is. It means your experience, your perspective, your way of tasting life is not a flawed copy of some official version of reality. It means that when you feel something deeply, that feeling has a truth of its own that no one can simply erase. In an age when priests and kings claim to hold the one and only truth, Protagoras handed ordinary people a quiet dignity. He told them that their own senses, their own judgments, their own lived experience genuinely mattered and were worthy of respect. It is a thought that can bring tears to the eyes of anyone who has felt dismissed or unseen. Your inner world, he insists, is not a mistake to be corrected. Of course, this beautiful idea carries a dizzying challenge hidden inside it. If every person is the measure of their own truth, then is there any truth that belongs to all of us together? Can we ever say that anyone is truly wrong about anything? Or must we accept that every opinion stands equal to every other? These questions have haunted philosophy for over 2,000 years, and they haunt us still today. Protagoras had opened a door to a room that humanity is still exploring, a room where truth and perspective dance together in ways we have never fully understood. These are not dusty academic puzzles, but living questions that shape how we treat each other. Every argument you have ever lost or won lives somewhere inside them. From his great principle flowed another idea that was just as bold and just as troubling. Protagoras taught that on every question there are always two opposing arguments, each with its own strength. No matter the subject, he believed, you could construct a persuasive case for one side and an equally persuasive case for the other. This was not mere trickery to him, but a profound truth about the many-sidedness of reality itself. Every coin has two faces, every story has two tellings, and the wise person learns to see and understand them both. To hold this idea is to see the world in stereo, hearing more than one voice at once. It is harder than picking a side, but it is also far richer. To see both faces of every question is to grow wiser and gentler at once. It is a lesson the world seems to forget and relearn in every age. This teaching made Protagoras a master of something powerful and a little frightening. He claimed he could teach a student to argue any side of any issue, to make the weaker argument appear the stronger. To his admirers, this was the height of intellectual skill, the ability to see all perspectives and speak persuasively about any of them. To his critics, this sounded like a dangerous recipe for deception, a way to win arguments regardless of the truth. This tension between honest open-mindedness and clever manipulation would follow the Sophists like a shadow for the rest of history. We still feel the same unease today whenever clever words seem to outrun honest truth. Protagoras forces us to ask what we really want from those who speak well. Yet we should be fair to Protagoras and see the deeper wisdom in what he taught. Learning to argue both sides of a question is not only a trick for winning debates, it is a path to genuine understanding. When you can truly make the case for the view you oppose, you finally understand it from the inside, and your own thinking grows deeper and more humble. This skill lies at the very heart of law, of politics, of science, and of every honest conversation between people who disagree. In teaching it, Protagoras was training people not just to win, but to think. The next time you are sure someone is wrong, try building their case as strongly as you can. You may be surprised by how much you learn about yourself in the process. There was another area where Protagoras showed breathtaking courage for his time. He turned his questioning mind toward the gods themselves, in an age when doubting the gods could get you killed. Concerning the gods, he wrote, I am not able to know whether they exist or do not exist, nor what they are like in form. He blamed the difficulty of the question and the shortness of human life for his uncertainty. In a deeply religious society, to openly admit that he simply did not know about the gods was an act of stunning honesty and nerve. In a time when such words could cost a man his life, this took a rare and quiet bravery. He chose honest doubt over comfortable pretending, whatever the price. He looked straight at the greatest mystery of all and simply told the truth about his own limits.
Understand what a bold and lonely thing this was to say out loud. Protagoras was not exactly denying the gods, but he was refusing to pretend to a certainty he did not feel. He was saying that some of the biggest questions might lie forever beyond the reach of human knowledge. This humble admission of not knowing was, in its own way, more radical than a bold denial would have been. It suggested that honest uncertainty was more truthful than confident belief, a thought that many people find just as challenging and freeing today as it was then. There is something strangely freeing in a great mind admitting the limits of what it knows. It gives the rest of us permission to say those three hard words, "I don't know." For a long stretch of his life, Protagoras enjoyed extraordinary success and honor. He became famous throughout the Greek world, his name known in every city, his teachings sought by the ambitious and the powerful. He amassed a great fortune from his lessons, living proof that his ideas had real value in the world. Young men flocked to hear him, hoping to learn the secrets of persuasion and success that he alone seemed to possess. For decades, he stood at the very summit of intellectual life, admired, wealthy, and endlessly in demand. For a while, the world seemed to reward his brilliance with everything a person could want. But fame, as his story would show, is a fragile and dangerous gift. Everyone wanted a piece of his brilliance, and for years the world could not get enough of him. He had reached a height that few thinkers ever taste. His fame carried him to Athens, the dazzling center of the Greek world, where he formed a remarkable friendship. There he grew close to Pericles, the greatest statesman of the age, the man who led Athens through its golden years. The two of them would spend long hours together, discussing philosophy, justice, and the deepest questions of human life. When Pericles founded a brand new city called Thurii, he chose Protagoras of all the minds in Greece to write its laws. Imagine the honor of being asked to design the very rules by which an entire city would live. To be chosen for such a task by such a man speaks volumes about the respect he commanded. The greatest statesman of the age saw in him a mind worth trusting. That request to write the laws of a city reveals something important about Protagoras. He was not merely a clever talker or a peddler of debating tricks, as his enemies liked to claim. He was trusted with one of the most serious tasks imaginable, shaping the justice and order of a whole community. This shows that his contemporaries saw real wisdom and real responsibility in him. The man who taught the truth was many-sided was also a man capable of building the solid foundations on which real people would live their lives. People do not hand the writing of their laws to a mere trickster or a shallow showman. They gave that sacred task to Protagoras because they believed in his wisdom. A society does not trust its deepest foundations to someone it believes is only clever. It trusts them to someone it believes is genuinely wise. Protagoras had thought deeply about how human beings come to live together at all. He told a beautiful story about the origins of human society and its fragile beginnings. In the beginning, he said, humans were scattered and weak, unable to survive the beasts and the harshness of the world. Only when they learned to form communities, to practice justice and mutual respect, could they finally flourish and thrive. For Protagoras, the capacity for justice and cooperation was the precious gift that allowed our fragile species to survive at all. His answer to how we survive still feels startlingly wise and startlingly kind. We made it, he believed, not through claws or strength, but through fairness and care. His story of our origins is really a story about why kindness is not weakness, but survival. What makes this story so moving is its faith in ordinary human beings. Protagoras believed that the sense of justice was not given to a chosen few, but shared among all people everywhere. Every person, he taught, carries within them some share of this social wisdom, this ability to live fairly alongside others. This was a deeply democratic idea, suggesting that every person has a voice worth hearing in the shared life of the community. In a world of rigid hierarchies, Protagoras was quietly insisting on the fundamental worth of every single person. It is a vision that treats the humblest person as a full partner in the human story. In an unequal world, that was a radical and beautiful thing to believe. To believe that every person carries a spark of justice is to believe in all of us. You can see how naturally his philosophy supported the young experiment of democracy. If every person is the measure of their own truth, then every person's view deserves a hearing in the public square. If the sense of justice lives in all of us, then all of us have a right to help shape the laws we live under. Protagoras gave democracy a philosophical foundation, a reason to believe that ordinary people could govern themselves wisely. His ideas and the democratic spirit of Athens fed each other, each making the other stronger and more daring. You can feel in his ideas the same hope that beats inside every free society today. He trusted people, and that trust was itself a kind of revolution. Democracy in his hands was not just a system, but a statement of faith in human beings. He believed we could be trusted with our own freedom. But holding such bold ideas in such a turbulent age was never going to be safe. As Protagoras grew older, the mood of Athens began to darken and turn against free thinkers. A devastating war with Sparta, a terrible plague, and mounting fear made the city suspicious of anyone who questioned the old certainties. The Sophists, with their unsettling ideas about truth and the gods, became easy targets for a frightened population. The same daring thoughts that had made Protagoras famous now began to make him dangerous to know. Fear has a way of turning a society against the very minds that once made it great, and Protagoras was about to feel the full weight of that ancient cruelty. It is a chilling reminder of how quickly admiration can curdle into suspicion. The crowd that cheers you today can turn on you tomorrow.
Then came the accusation that would shatter his final years of life. Protagoras was charged with impiety, the terrible crime of dishonoring the gods because of his honest words about not knowing whether they existed. In fearful, wartime Athens, his humble uncertainty was twisted into a dangerous insult against the sacred order. The very honesty that made him a great philosopher now made him a marked man. The city that had once celebrated him was preparing to turn against him with frightening speed. It is a heartbreaking pattern that history has repeated far too many times since. The honest voice in frightened times is so often the first to be silenced. A frightened city looks for someone to blame, and the honest thinker makes an easy scapegoat. His clarity had become his crime. Soon came one of the saddest images in the entire history of ideas. According to ancient accounts, the Athenians ordered that all copies of Protagoras' books be collected and publicly burned. His writings, containing a lifetime of careful thought, were thrown into the flames in the marketplace. Imagine the pain of watching your life's work turn to ash because your honesty frightened the powerful. It was one of the first recorded book burnings in Western history, a chilling attempt to destroy an idea by destroying the pages that carried it. To watch your life's work burn must be among the deepest sorrows a thinker can know. Yet even the flames could not reach the idea itself, safe inside human minds. Every book-burning sense has carried the same terrible hope that ideas can be killed like men. Burning his books robbed us of treasures we can never recover. Almost everything Protagoras wrote is lost to us forever, burned away or crumbled into dust over the centuries. We know his ideas today only through fragments, through the writings of others, often through the words of those who disagreed with him. It is a haunting thought that one of history's most influential thinkers survives mostly as an echo, a shadow, a handful of sentences quoted by his rivals. So much brilliance reduced to scattered shards glimmering in the dark.
It is a strange and painful thing to know a giant mostly through the words of his critics. What we have lost in that fire we can only begin to imagine. Somewhere in those ashes were answers we will now spend forever trying to rediscover. History rarely mourns its lost books, but this one we should. Fittingly, for a man who prized honest doubt, the story of his death is wrapped in uncertainty. According to one tradition, Protagoras fled from Athens to escape the charges against him, taking ship across the sea. During that desperate voyage, the story goes, his ship was caught in a storm and sunk, and the great philosopher drowned beneath the waves. Whether this dramatic tale is true or not, it captures something of the tragedy of his final days. A wise man driven from the city he had served, dying in exile and fear. The measure of all things had met the immeasurable sea. Even in death, he seems to slip through our fingers, uncertain and half-legend. Perhaps that is fitting for the philosopher who taught us to live with not knowing.
It would be easy to see his ending as a defeat, but that would miss the deeper truth. They could burn his books and drive him from the city, but they could not burn the idea he had planted in the human mind. The thought that each person is the measure of their own reality proved impossible to destroy, surviving every flame and every storm. Ideas, unlike men and unlike paper, have a way of slipping free and living on in the minds of those who come after. Protagoras died, but the questions he asked refused to die with him. That is the strange immortality of a truly powerful thought, that it outlives every attempt to kill it. You cannot drown an idea, and you cannot burn a question. You can silence a voice, but you cannot unspeak a thought once it has entered the world. His idea had already taken root in too many minds to ever be erased. Across the centuries, his great question has returned again and again to challenge every generation. Is truth the same for everyone, or does it live differently in each of us? Philosophers have argued fiercely over this puzzle from his day to our own, and they are arguing still. Every time someone insists that we must respect different perspectives, they are echoing Protagoras. And every time someone worries that respecting all views might dissolve truth entirely, they are wrestling with the very danger he first revealed to the world. You yourself take part in his great debate every time you weigh your truth against another's. His question is not ancient history, it is the air we still breathe. We are all, in a sense, still his students, still turning his question over in our hands. The conversation he started has never once fallen silent. Far beyond the dusty halls of philosophy, his influence reaches into your daily life. Every courtroom where two lawyers argue opposing sides before a jury carries his fingerprint. Every democratic debate, where clashing views compete for the people's favor, grows from the soil he helped to till. Every time a teacher urges a student to consider another point of view, the spirit of Protagoras is quietly in the room. He shaped not just what we think, but the very way we argue, decide, and live together. Whenever you pause to consider that you might not have the whole picture, he is with you. His spirit lives not in books alone, but in the way we reach for fairness. The next time you truly listen to someone you disagree with, you are keeping his memory alive. He taught us that listening is its own kind of wisdom. A profound humanity sits at the core of everything Protagoras believed. He placed human beings, with all their differences and limitations, at the very center of the world. He trusted ordinary people to judge their own experience, to argue their own case, to share in the work of justice. In a universe that can feel cold and indifferent, he insisted that human perspective and human dignity truly matter. This is why across so many centuries his ideas still feel warm, still feel personal, still feel like they are speaking directly to you. This is why his voice across so many centuries still feels less like a lecture and more like a friend. He believed in you before you were ever born. He looked at fragile, flawed, ordinary human beings and saw something worthy of respect. In doing so, he gave each of us a little more dignity to stand on.
Perhaps the greatest gift Protagoras offers us is a kind of thoughtful humility. If truth wears a different face for each of us, then we should hold our own certainties a little more lightly. We should listen more carefully to those who see the world differently, knowing they may be measuring a reality just as real as our own. This does not mean that nothing is true, but that understanding grows richer when we honor more than one point of view. In a world torn by people certain they alone are right, this ancient wisdom feels desperately needed once again. In a world so full of people shouting that they alone are right, his gentleness is a balm. To hold your truth firmly and kindly at once is a rare and precious art. So the next time you and someone you love disagree about something small, remember the man from Abdera. Remember that the room really can be warm for you and cold for them, that two people can hold different truths and both be worthy of respect. Protagoras invites you to trust your own experience while making room for the experience of others, to be confident and humble at the very same time. He lived and died more than 2,000 years ago, yet his voice still whispers to you across the ages. You, he says, with all your flaws and all your feelings, are the measure of your own vast and precious world. That single idea may be the most generous gift any philosopher has ever offered you. Carry it gently and share it kindly wherever your own measure leads you.
Protagoras of Abdera lived nearly 2,500 years ago, and though his enemies burned his books and the sea may have swallowed his final days, the single idea he gave the world has never stopped shaping how we think about truth, perspective, and one another. He was the first great sophist, the first professional teacher, the friend of Pericles who was trusted to write the laws of a city, and the fearless thinker who dared to say that he could not know whether the gods existed at all. Above everything else, he was the man who declared that the human being is the measure of all things, that your experience of the world carries a truth that is genuinely yours, and that reality itself may bloom differently in every person who lives it. That single thought was radical then, and it remains radical now, gently insisting that your feelings, your senses, and your judgments matter, while also asking you to grant that same dignity to everyone around you. He taught us that every question has two sides, that honest uncertainty can be braver than false certainty, and that a fragile human community survives only through justice, respect, and the willingness to truly listen. If his story has touched something in you, then let it remind you that the way you see the world is precious and real, that the people who disagree with you may be measuring a truth just as real as your own, and that wisdom often begins the moment we hold our certainties a little more gently. So walk through your days as the measure of your own world. Trust what you feel while honoring what others feel. And remember the brave thinker from a mocked little city who taught humanity across all the centuries to find the truth within itself.